Hi, welcome to Art and Fashion with Dominique on the Daily Blue. Today we are here with Jeffrey Fisher. Hi Jeff, how are you?
Hello Dominique, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So tell me about your artwork. What kind of an artist are you?
Well, what I do mostly is illustration. Books, magazines, posters, theater posters, things of that sort. And I also run the drawing studio over in Smithtown, which has a number of people who are actually in the business of illustration of fine art, as well as kids in college, and even a few high school kids sprinkled in for good measure.
Okay, where have your illustrations and your artwork been featured and used?
Well, I've done children's books for Reader's Digest, which has been published all over the world. I've worked for the Smithsonian Institution, their magazine, Reader's Digest, the Smithsonian. They got to go through the whole client list. You have Doubleday, you have HarperCollins, you have the Eastern Press. Down at the Society of Illustrators, we call ourselves art sluts. We'll draw anything for money.
Now, do you mostly do commissioned work, or do you also exhibit as a fine artist as well?
No. Well, I do exhibit as a fine artist as well at different galleries. There's Gallery North, there's the Society of Illustrators to some degree in the city. There's a number of other galleries we have. We've had the Pepco Gallery down in Washington, D.C., which is another interesting thing that I've gotten involved in through Victor Uhas and another gentleman by the name of Michael Fay, who was a Marine War artist. He started a project called the Joe Bonham Project. The Joe Bonham Project is named after Joe Bonham, who was the main character in the book Johnny Got His Gun. And the essence of that book was at the very end, he was nothing but a piece of meat. He had no ears, no face, no nothing. They stuffed him away in a meat locker because they didn't want to deal with it. We would go down to, at first, Bethesda, the Naval Hospital, and then Walter Reed came and took it over. And we would go down and draw the guys when they got back from Iraq and Afghanistan for the historical record. We've sat down with one of the directors of the Smithsonian, and eventually we'd like to get it in there. But right now, the show is traveling the country. It's been down to D.C., it's been in New York, it's been to North Carolina. It was a month or two ago, I believe it was in Colorado. And so, it's been circulating around the country to some degree, and which is nice. It's also one of those things that people like, oh really? You're never going to get paid for it. We knew going into it that this was going to be an out-of-pocket thing, but that's not why we did it. And we did it for the historical record. We did it because it's probably one of the only wars that the United States has been involved in that they didn't have war artists on the spot drawing continuously. They had them in the Vietnam War, they had them in Korea, they had them in World War II, they had them in World War I. Didn't have them in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so what happens is we're trying to record that when they come back to the States. Go ahead, any other questions?
Yeah. Can you elaborate more about the Society of Illustrators and your involvement with them?
The Society of Illustrators is over 100 years old. It's an institution that a bunch of guys were sitting around and decided they wanted a place to hang out, and that was it. I can't remember what year they bought the building that now exists at 128 East 63rd Street. But when I became a member, I ended up helping hang shows, and then one thing led to another, and I became the chairman of the members show. Then I became the chairman of the hang committee, and now I've been on the board of directors for God knows how long. I really think I'm there for comic relief, though. That's basically what I'm there for.
I could believe that.
But they do a lot of things. Just a little while ago, we had acquired MoCA, which is the Museum of Comic and Cartoon Art. And they were kind of going under, and they had come to us and said, look, if you don't take us over, we're going to disappear. So we did. We incurred some of their debt, which wasn't too bad. to people that would probably might not even wander into the Society of Illustrators. So that was interesting. And we set up Mocha Fest, and everyone who had gone there before that had said what a wonderful job we had done for it, because it was much better organized. It was much more professionally set up. You had a whole series of speakers. You had our actual chef from the Society of Illustrators, pretty damn good, was doing a lot of the cooking down there. So yeah, you had some good food as well. This year we had it at the Armory down on like 28th and 21st Street or somewhere down there. Now the city changed the rules. You can't have any more than 600 people in the Armory at one time. Well, there's just about over 600 people who were showing their artwork at one time. So now we're over by the piers in Chelsea. So it's not going to be on one floor, it's on three. So the logistics are a little different. But the building is newer, and it should be an interesting place. The Society of Illustrators also has to do with some education, because I guess it was about like 7 or 8 years ago, used to be the old boys club. Now, as sexist as that sounds, that's exactly what it was. Because back in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, most illustrators were all men. And the Society of Illustrators, and they had stables in the city, and what you had was lunchtime would come around, and you'd have these guys going down for 3 martini lunches. The cigarette smoke would be so thick you could cut it with a knife. They'd have the models down there that they were shooting at the time. And it was always kind of in the red. It was not a well-run institution financially. So eventually, in order for it to survive, they had to turn it into a 501(c). And it became not only the Society of Illustrators, which you paid members' dues to, but now it became the Museum of American Illustration. And through that, we've had to write grants. Annelle Miller, who's the director, had done a wonderful job with that, writing grants, setting up educational programs. And we even have, I think it's actually happening next week, is the Education Symposium. We have guys from all over the country, different colleges, coming in to talk and things like that. Any other questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for young artists and illustrators looking to work in the art field and actually get paid to do artwork and get commissioned,
it's gotten worse.
Get commissioned pieces. Where should they start? What are they looking to do? Where's a good point of departure for them to start looking for work?
Actually, they should learn to draw first. Okay. That's important. We talk about that all the time. I tell somebody, I said, I have done this my whole life. I've only wanted to do this. It's all I've ever wanted to do. Whether I'm an old jock doing this or that, the only thing I've ever wanted to do was draw and paint and do images. I tell people, and guys, and I've worked at home 99% of my life, other than just going on site or doing the murals at the library or somewhere else. I tell people this, best job in the world if you love it. And I'm serious about that. It is the best job in the world if you love it. I can also see it being about the worst if you don't love it. Because you're all alone 3 o'clock in the morning sitting down in the studio doing these drawings. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, find something else to do. Because you can probably make better money doing something else. The other thing I tell all the kids that come into classes, one thing you got to know about being an artist. People are like, oh, you're so talented, just sit down and draw. No, it don't work that way. It never did. Probably one of the most labor-intensive careers you will ever pick. Because when I was at Parsons, I used to see some of the kids that, of course they don't do art now, would come into Dave Passalak when we were standing around, and they would go, oh, I just can't wait to take off the summer and go to Europe and relax. I couldn't wait to do the next drawing. I couldn't wait to get back to work. There was another person that came in saying that I find it hard to work on something when I'm not getting paid for it. You want to know what? Go do something else. Because if you're not thinking about creating images, if you're not thinking about concepts, if you're not thinking about how you can explore visually, you're probably in the wrong field. another story, since you got me on the bandwagon, is I was doing the location class. I think you've been to the location class at one time or another. And man rolls in, daughter's in the class. He happens to be a bank president. So he looks at me and kind of, along the same lines of the question you asked, he goes, what can she do with art? I said, well, there's the obvious, what you see in museums, sculpture, what I do, illustration. I said, but let me ask you a question, I said to the gentleman. I said, did you take a shower this morning? So, of course, at first he's a little offended. He's like, oh, no, did you take a shower this morning? He goes, well, yes, I did. I said, did you pull the shower curtain across the tub? He goes, yeah. Was there a design on that shower curtain? He's like, yeah. I go, artist did that. I said, your coffee pot, your wallpaper, the signs you see on the street, the sneakers you wear on your feet, the clothes that are on your back. I said, you see this nice car you drove up in? Before an engineer ever touched it, I said, an artist sculpted it. So you're asking me, what is art? I said, it's all around you. You just don't see it because you're crunching numbers. You're trying to sell somebody a loan so the bank can make money. I said, but it's all around you if you take your time to look. So that's what you can do with art. And, it depends on what venues the kid wants to go into. Illustration, you have animation, you have character design, you have gaming. The Air Force Art Program is another thing that the Society of Illustrators have. We've had it for over 60 years, where we'll go to an Air Force base or we'll go somewhere and the Air Force picks up, you don't get paid for it, but the Air Force picks up the bill and you essentially give them an image. And they have a hell of a collection. And what happens is, that's another real interesting relationship. But you meet all sorts of guys there too. One of them was a game designer. Not the characters, but the backgrounds. And his father is actually an artist and illustrator, but more a fine artist in New York City. Because Victor Juhas met him when he came to speak at Parsons. Victor Juhas is a little older than me, so I'm just going to lay that out there. But again, there's a whole range of people you meet, and there's a whole range of things you can go into. I know people that are doing graphic novels, which I'm involved with a few authors that I've done. Finally, Reed Farrell Coleman, who were doing Blood Alley with, got onto the Times bestseller list, which is good for me. It means that we can move that graphic novel a little quicker. But there's there's a whole different venue of different things you can do with art, and so guys I know that are doing graphic novels now don't even do it on paper anymore. They do it on the Wacom tablets, I believe they're called, and they get the pens and they sit there and they draw with them. Actually, a guy who we had a show over at Gallery North that some people missed, but a lot of people made it, and. And Steve Walters he comes to class to draw for the professional development class, but he doesn't do his graphic novels on paper. He does them on a Wacom tablet. And you can erase it, but you're still drawing. Essentially, you have to be able to draw. And I'll do workshops. Actually, Nike hired me last year. They were talking about going out there again, where they flew me out. They put me up in a hotel. And I ran a workshop with their artists for a week, which that was a lot of fun. And I tell them, like I tell everybody that comes into class, that I don't teach anybody to draw. So you know what a drawing is? Drawing's a skill. That's all it is. That's all it has ever been. People are like, well, I can't draw a straight line. Neither can I. That's why I use a straight edge. What happens is, I said, the humanities used to teach drawing all the time back in the 1800s. The explorers would go out west, and in their sketchbooks, they would have these magnificent drawings of mesas, plains, but they weren't artists, but they knew how to draw. Just because you draw doesn't make you an artist, but all artists should be able to draw. I don't teach people to draw because it's a skill. Like I said, it's like being a carpenter on the job. First day on the job, you're driving in 10 penny nails, your hands are all black and blue. 6 months down the road, you're driving those suckers in 2 shots. That's what drawing is. What I do is I teach people how to see. Then your mark, your line, everything you do, you own. Because you come to that table, you come to that piece of paper with a whole set of tools that nobody else in the world owns but you. Just a matter of you finding out how to use them. And when we talk about vision, you talk about not just seeing the model, but seeing the space, seeing the composition, seeing the rhythm. Then you can take it wherever you want to. Another question.
So you teach, I hear.
In some places. I've taught at Farmingdale. I managed to try not to step on too many toes. I've spoken I've lectured at Parsons. I've done talks and taught a little bit
You
at
have
Spot
the
of My
drawing
Friend
studio.
at Pratt. And I have the drawing studio in Smithtown, which runs a figure drawing class on Sundays, which goes from 1 to 7. So it's a 5-week, 6-hour course. And then there's a crit after each class on a Sunday, so it's really kind of an 8-hour class. So by the time you're done with that class, you've put in about 40 hours worth of work. So you're talking about a semester's worth of work for that 5 weeks. Then there's the professional development class, which runs 15 weeks. In the first 2 weeks, a model comes in, half of the class is nude, half the class is a costume, and then the third week is a critique. So everybody's working on their projects, whether this fine artist is doing landscapes or some show coming up, this person's doing illustrations that he wants to sell, and then it alternates every other week. And then there's the figure painting class, which is somewhat self-explanatory.
And what day is that on?
The figure drawing class is on the figure painting class is on a Tuesday. The professional development class is on a Monday evening, Tuesday evening, and Sunday during the day from 1 to 7.
And how does one sign up for your classes?
You can go to the website, which is www.thedrawingstudioli.com. It's also under the Drawing Studio of Long Island. Or you can actually go on Facebook, because there's the Drawing Studio LI on Facebook. And those are the 2 ways you can see what's kind of happening with them. Also on the Facebook, because I'm still learning how to work WordPress, which is mostly what the drawing studio is on, to load up pictures, you can always see the albums, and the albums are actually what's happening in the class at that moment. Mm-hmm. So there's several, when we do the crit, they'll have 10 drawings stuck out, and you'll pick a few drawings to shoot, to put up as a representational, what's the word I'm looking for? I was on a good roll to represent what they had achieved that day. Not every drawing they're going to do is good, and plus I tell people when they come to class, you're not doing drawings here anyway. Drawings take hours and hours. What you're doing is you're doing studies to understand yourself, to understand line, to understand your evolution. That's what you're doing in class.
And in terms of your classes, they're not just beginner classes or professional classes. Pretty much anybody can kind of use it as a starting point and then develop their work from there?
Yes. You got to remember, I've talked to teachers when I've done workshops with teachers and stuff like that. I said, the other thing I said is, you teach yours, and a lot of people have gone for education and go, you know, I draw a little bit, I'll teach an art class. If you're going to teach it right, probably the hardest class to teach. You cannot teach it in a textbook. Nobody can be on, okay, today we're on chapter 10, tomorrow we'll be on chapter 11. It don't work that way, because you got this one kid who's still on chapter 1, struggling. The other kid started out at 10, started to explode, hit a wall, and now he's down to 7. You have to adjust, extremely adjust, to each person in the class. Each person needs something else. Each person sees different. Each person meets a different set of sensibilities that they create from. So you have to be in tune with that. So you're really dancing across the minefield sometimes in order to really produce what you need to.
So are you exhibiting anywhere in the future? Are there any exhibits that have your students that are showing?
Yes, the Paper Doll Boutique, I know a number of them who are actually in the graduate program. Some are out of school and have sold work. You know, you have a few professionals that are running around, as well as some who had just gotten out of FIT. You have graduates of MICA, Stony Brook, who some of them are now getting their masters and the bachelor's in fine arts at CW Post. There, I believe a lot of them are submitting to this show, this holiday show, Thanksgiving show at the Paper Doll Boutique on Main Street in Sayville. Wonderful place.
That'll be the first Friday in November.
I believe so. Yes, you are correct.
Any other shows coming up that your students are involved in or that you're involved in?
Not at the moment. I don't know where. I know the Joe Bonham show was down in South Carolina. I just was in 2 shows in Gallery North, which was the printmaking show, which I had actually images I had done for Treasure Island as etchings, a lino cut that was for the Jabberwocky for Globe Books, and then one of the pieces for the Joe Bonham project, which when we went down there to draw the soldiers, I came back and turned one of those drawings into a dry point, and then ran it off on the press, because we also have a printing press in the drawing studio. And so other than the things I'm working on now, which is the serial with Gary Phillips, who's an author, that's Capital in Maine, which is I guess an activist type of website out in LA, and the graphic novels that I'm working on with a couple of other authors. You know, that's about it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks for coming on the show. And we will see you next week on The Daily Blue with our next guest. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you again, my dear.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
How much